Driftwood Stories, Episode 1: The Cat and the Sunset Secret. Just take a moment to allow your eyes to close. And with your eyes closed, I don't know whether you will drift asleep faster to the sound of my voice or the spaces between my words. And as you fall asleep, I will tell a sleep story in the background. Let the world around you melt gently away, and allow your breath to fall into rhythm with the peaceful tide of night. Deep in a woodland painted with golden leaves and stitched together by winding roots, lived a cat named Vesper. Vesper was thoughtful, quiet, and curious, with paws that barely made a sound as they stepped on mossy ground. They were building a little house out of sticks and old planks they found washed up near a narrow boat moored quietly on a silent riverbank. The boat never moved, but always seemed to shift ever so slightly, as if nudged by the memory of a current. Every morning, magpies would visit the clearing, dropping small treasures, bits of ribbon, curls of gift wrapping, and shiny buttons torn into strange shapes. Vesper took these offerings and used them to decorate the doorway, believing the magpies were leaving riddles. Each item was placed with intention: a button for clarity, a ribbon for balance, and wrapping paper for surprise. They wondered if the messages were from their grandfather, now long gone, who had once whispered of the secret language of birds. Inside the house was a single chair, smooth, curved, carved long ago by Vesper's grandfather from a tree that whispered when the wind passed through. In Newton's cradle hung from a string tied to the rafters, gently clicking and clacking in the breeze, like an old clock ticking in a daydream. One evening, as the sky melted into a palette of purples and golds, Vesper stood beside a fluorescent lake not far from their clearing, tying knots in a piece of rope. The act calmed them, each knot a symbol of something anchored, something understood. And it was in that moment, as the final bird call echoed across the water and the sun slipped behind the hills, that something strange happened. A shimmer, soft and pulsing, appeared across the lake. There, across the lake, Vesper saw a glimmer. Not the moon, not a star. It shimmered like it was alive, like it had breath, drawn to it. Vesper felt a stirring deep within, something soft, something uncertain, like a forgotten story, knocking gently on the door of memory. They knew they had to find out what it was. The next morning, beneath a sky dotted with feathery clouds and the hush of dew, Vesper packed a small satchel, locked their tiny door with a twist of the rope knot, and set off across the countryside. They brought a few things: a tiny map drawn on leaf parchment, a spool of thread, their grandfather's old compass, and the soft belief that answers were waiting. Their journey took them along tall grass paths, beside forgotten wells where frogs spoke in riddles, and under archways of ivy, so old they looked like nature's cathedrals. Along the way, they heard stories passed on by travelers of a blind artist who lived alone in a cottage at the edge of the horizon, who was said to paint not with sight, but with light. Vesper wondered if this artist might know what they saw at the lake. Or maybe, just maybe, they needed someone wise to help them understand the tangle inside. How to find control, not in holding tight, but in letting go. The road was winding and filled with quiet magic. First, Vesper stumbled upon a fairground in a field that hadn't existed the day before. Music played from nowhere. A giraffe served cotton candy spun like clouds, and a young girl balanced on stilts while telling bedtime stories to a polar bear who was fishing beside a mirage of snow. When Vesper asked the bear what he was fishing for, he answered, "Dreams that forgot where they came from." Later, beneath a beanstalk wrapped around a palm tree, Vesper found a hidden entrance to a secret cave. There, deep inside, a magic wand floated in a glass case shaped like a bell jar. It hummed a lullaby no one had heard for centuries. Vesper placed their paw against the glass and closed their eyes. The melody felt like a memory wrapped in warmth. They wandered further and met a blue horse that drank cool water from a bubbling spring. The horse had eyes like distant planets and spoke of tolerance and patience. "The path only narrows," he said, "when you try to walk it all at once." Rain tapped gently on Vesper's tent that night, and the sound felt like hugs from the sky, each drop a reminder of kindness. In the morning, the rain had stopped but left dew that glittered like tiny diamonds across every leaf. They met others too, a fun fair operator with a hat full of laughter, a sleepy owl reading a book of forgotten songs, and a palm tree that offered coconut milk and stories of the sea. Every experience, every voice, echoed something deeper. Then one morning, as Vesper sat beside a pile of forgotten potatoes arranged in curious shapes, they met the blind artist. She wore a necklace of painted stones and held a mirror book in her lap. Her eyes, though closed, seemed to see everything. "You're searching for light you already carry," she said, brushing the air with her fingers. "The shimmering you saw wasn't outside of you. The sunset only showed you your own reflection. It reminded you what lives within." Vesper smiled. The knots they tied, the cradle that clicked, the chair their grandfather made, all symbols, all reminders. They had not needed to find control, They needed to remember the beauty in not having it, the dance of wind in trees, the way ripples spread across water, the soft, patient unfolding of time. On the way home, they met a kangaroo mouse who shared a golden apple and spoke of courage in quiet things. In the tall grass, a moose read them a coded letter written in stars. The message was simple: together we grow. A grasshopper bounced alongside them for a while, saying little, but its company felt like home. Vesper returned to their little house in the woods. The chair welcomed them like an old friend. The cradle clicked its familiar rhythm, and the magpies were already waiting with new treasures. Outside, the magpies danced around a tree with crystal leaves, their wings like polished onyx. Above, planets shimmered like wind chimes in the sky. A goat rested peacefully beneath the eaves, chewing thoughtfully on mint. An eagle soared far overhead, leaving behind a trail of peace. Inside, Vesper placed the mirror book beside their bed and laid down to sleep. A breeze drifted through the open window, carrying the scent of a jungle garden and the soft flap of an eagle's wings. A tiny fan spun lazily overhead, and in the corner, a chrysalis began to glow softly with the promise of becoming. And as the stars watched from above, the world grew quiet, and Vesper, wrapped in stillness, sank into the space between thoughts, drifting and floating deeply asleep into slumberland, wrapped in the hush of dreams, where stories bloom like starlight and peace is the only sound.